All right, sweet. So today we're going to do a gym owner breakdown with Rhys Lewis. So we just want to start off, mate, just by setting the scene a little bit, really, and we'll get into like what's working, what's worked well for your business, and like what you've learned, kind of building everything out over the last few years. So if you want to tell us a little bit of an intro about your gym, like what kind of gym you have, what model, where, how long you've been running, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I actually am on my second location now, which has been open since the 5th of January 2026. So we're literally about 20 days odd in now. I have been with you guys since I believe it was June 2023, which was my first location. So we're coming up on the sort of 2-year mark now. My current gym is a group and one-to-one personal training gym. I sort of have a bit of both going on there with primary sort of focus around the group training model. My previous gym started as a one-to-one personal training gym, but we quickly sort of progressed on when I owned that onto doing the sort of group training model with you guys. So I introduced that sort of under your instruction, and I've been sort of rolling with it and sort of building on that ever since.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, obviously you started in one to one. What was kind of the thought process or the motivation behind going, well, let's layer some group stuff into this initially?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been through a sort of similar journey to a lot of people in my position. I was quite young when I first sort of went into the gym ownership business. I think I was just turned 25 years old, and the gym that I sort of bought into was a one-to-one personal training gym exclusively. So when you first go into business, your initial thought is, how can I just maximize what I'm doing here? So my sole sort of aim when I first went into that business was to just max out the books on one-to-one PTs, and I'm sure a lot of people who are PT can attest to the fact that pulling 8 PTs back to back is just completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
Um, I quickly found that out, that the amount of work that I was putting into the business wasn't corresponding to much financial reward, if at all. So after I'd sort of got to that point where I thought, right, well, I can't expand this business. I've sort of hit my ceiling without making it, ridiculously expensive to do one-to-one personal training. My next sort of direction was to head in sort of group personal training.
Yeah, that makes sense. Then obviously, I know when we first kind of spoke and got you started down that path, you were basically at zero members on the group side of things. So like going from that point to, where you ended up before you moved to the location you're in now, what was kind of like the steps, the process, everything that you went through to go from, zero group members essentially to being, I think it was around 100 at that point, was it, when we moved to the
Yeah.
new
So,
place?
so I mean, when I was looking, I think one of the things that appealed to me with you guys is that you're very structured in what you do, and the way that you sort of pitch it to people is that we can quickly introduce this new model, and it's going to give your gym some more capacity to increase the revenue. Make life a bit easier for you. So I was still coaching 40 plus hours of one-to-one PT a week. So it was a case of adding in the gym owner system periodically, so that one, I didn't burn out, and then two, I didn't go too sort of much one way, if you like. So I didn't
Yeah.
start off with 50 group sessions a week. I started off very small. It was 5. I think at the very beginning, and as the sort of demand grew and I saw how much potential the model had, we sort of added it in from there until the groups at my previous gym sort of accounted for probably 70% of the gym's overall revenue. So that
Yeah.
was within, I mean, it was, 3 months of hard work trying to learn the systems, on top of coaching all of those hours, and start implementing them as a sort of a one-man team. But once, I had 20, 30, 40 group members, and I saw that the demand was there, and I saw that the potential for the revenue of the business to shoot up in kind, then, it was an easy decision for me to start growing that model.
Yeah, I remember we spoke about the kind of limited timetable in the beginning, and you did it the, really smart way of starting small, which is kind of how I did it at my gym when we first opened. We weren't doing one-on-one PT at all, but I started with just Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights. I think we spoke about that, and then added in Tuesday, Thursdays, then added in the mornings, and like scaled out the timetable that way. And I think you did that in the
It
right
makes
way for
sense,
sure.
doesn't it? Because I think, just to give you an example, I've got a Pilates studio opening next door to my current gym, and she told me that she was starting off with 50 sessions. And I said, how many how many teachers do you have? How many clients do you have signed up? And she said 15. And I thought, okay, well, I can part with a bit of knowledge here. I'd say maybe start with something a little bit smaller, maybe 10 sessions a week. So you're not having to fork out all the money for the coaches and stuff like that. And, burn yourself out, have zero, one, two people in a class, start small. And as a sort of membership base grows and the demand grows, similarly to what I did, start adding those in
Yeah.
as you go. And then, you're going to sort of meet the demand there and your classes are going to be full. They're going to be good vibes. You don't want to have empty class. You just don't have one person in the class. So yeah, that's the sort of the strategy that I use sort of under your guidance at the start to sort of grow my group training model as the demand sort of increased with it.
Yeah, I think it makes sense doing it that way as well because you find yourself, and again, I've done it this way where we've overdone the timetable at certain points, and you find yourself coaching one person, two people, and you could have compressed all that down and give yourself a little bit more leverage on the delivery side, but also give you more time to actually get more clients because you end up in a tough position where you kind of stand on the gym floor for one person or no people, but you're also not doing anything to bring more people in. So it's a smart way to do it there. So for you then, Rhys, in the first kind of like year or so, we went from zero to, where did you get to in terms of member numbers, revenue, whatever you're happy to share
I
on that?
think before I moved to my current location, I think my capacity for group members was 96. So we're talking just under 100, but I was routinely at that number, which is obviously why I've moved to a facility that allows me to grow that sort of operational capacity within the business. But yeah, I had 96 group members and then I had a further sort of 30 one-to-one clients on top of that. So the schedule was full. I thought it was sort of a nice thing to have, your eggs not all in one basket in terms of the groups and still have some, diversification in terms of like your revenue streams in case maybe one month, wasn't so good. But like I said, in my experience with the groups, I was regularly with the sort of marketing philosophies that we implemented as well. I was regularly sold out on groups and had even waiting lists at some point to join the gym. So I knew that the demand was there to sort of expand that model. But equally, my previous location was 700 square foot. I did not have a lot of space to work with. So, there's a lot of maneuvers that you can pull, within the sort of gym owner system to maximize that capacity. But I was there with what I was doing
Yeah.
and the sort of business model that I was running. Like we were ready to sort of move on to a bigger location quite quickly.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely a mistake a lot of people run into is they think, they don't look at their capacity and how to maximize that, as you said, and they get in a position where they feel like they need a bigger gym too soon and they haven't looked at how do they, optimize their square footage so they're utilizing that properly, how, they optimize their schedule and, number of people in sessions and all that kind of stuff. Because you're obviously starting from zero, but we work with other gyms that come in that are thinking about getting a second location or opening a bigger gym. And we're like, you can probably, at least kind of double your revenue in the facility that you got now with these small tweaks, and it'll be much more profitable than trying to open a new site and more team and all that kind of stuff.
100%, man. I think we'll probably go on to that in due course. But, one of the main things that I've noticed, I mean, I've been in the sort of fitness scene my whole life, really. Similarly to you, I played rugby, sort of went through a very similar sort of transition into coaching and gym ownership. So I know a lot of people, who have their own facilities. And I think that's genuinely one of the biggest mistakes that people make is just they have these enormous facilities that cost a whole bunch of money to run and upkeep and stuff like that. And it just eats away at the revenue. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you could probably do the exact same thing you're doing now in 1,000 square foot, and
Yeah.
are you even maximizing the facility that you have at the moment in terms of your like timetable and what you're offering? Because at the end of the day, it's about your margins of profit, isn't it? If you're a business that's running a 2,000 square foot facility that costs you 6 grand a month to rent, in comparison to maybe one half the size, which is making the same money, it's logical to go for something that's smaller and maximize that model. When you have maximized that, then you're in a position to move on to maybe something slightly bigger or even opening a second facility.
Yeah, exactly. I think we'll talk about your most recent location shortly, but I think just
Mm.
to flip back, you mentioned around, you're kind of at that capacity mark for a long time with the marketing strategies and all that kind of stuff that you had in place. So what kind of things did you find, worked really well on that side for your gym specifically for keep getting you to that point where you're at capacity and then keeping you there where you had like a waiting list and all that?
Yeah, well, with me, I never had loads of money to play around with. I self-financed the gym. I remember I spent the money that I'd saved playing rugby and basically, working as a PT on the side to I spent that sort of house deposit money on getting into the business and stuff like that. And I didn't have a lot of, spare change. So the one thing that I sort of taken away from my previous business is that you can have all the fancy equipment and cameras and have a wicked social media page, but that doesn't necessarily translate into clients. I think when you're forced to sort of focus on the things that maybe don't cost you so much money, you start focusing in on the sort of service that you provide. And if that is really slick and you've got good PTs who know what they're doing and there's a system in place with sort of a standard operating procedure, your service is what you are judged on. You can have a PT with you can have a gym with all of the equipment in the world and all the most fancy stuff, but have, a shit PT or,
Yeah,
the class structure is rubbish and, people won't come back. So I focused on the things that didn't cost me any money, which was making sure everyone knew what they were doing in the sessions. The system was sort of standardized across the board. So it didn't matter which PT you were training under, you got exactly the same quality within the session. And yeah, I just focused on that sort of community stuff as well, making sure everyone who was a member at the gym got sort of regular touch points with us and really felt like they weren't just a number within the gym, but they were getting, the service that we were offering. And that was on the conversion calls that I did, I think that was the biggest bit of feedback is that, everything was really, really clear, concise. Everyone knew what they were doing. The system was kind of like standardized across the process, like I said, and they felt like they were getting the service that they were paying for. And it didn't matter that maybe we didn't have the best equipment. We knew what we were doing, and that's what, the client stayed for.
yeah, that makes sense. All right, perfect. So in terms of the new location, I think when you started your last gym, or when you came to us with the last gym, it was all one to one. You were layering on like the group model, which then became like the majority of the revenue there. Then you've moved on to opening a completely new site. I think in both cases, we used a launch process in terms of combination of ads and emails and sales calls and stuff like that to help kickstart both of those. So what did that kind of process look like for you? How did that kind of impact, you know, both of those gyms? And then talk a little bit about, plans for that gym moving forward and capacity and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, 100%. So I think one of the first things that I did, obviously, as a lot of people who have gone through the sort of legal process on getting a new location are aware, sometimes it's a case of it's going ahead, it's not going ahead. There's this, that, and the other to pay for, whatever. So I was never super clear on the time that I had and the date that I was going to open. It was kind of a case of, as things progressed, I was like, okay, I think it's more likely to be here. And in the end, we were only, 3 days later than we'd actually planned. I mean, it took like 10 years off my life getting it open, but we got it open in the end. It was graft. But in terms of sort of the system that we implemented, I think I had a chat with you and Jess about sort of a launch sort of sequence in terms of ads. So under your guys' sort of instruction and advice, I went and filmed some sort of, ads within the actual building site itself and sort of marketed it as a new place opening in the middle of Weybridge High Street's first group training gym. And I believe we launched those 2 weeks prior to the actual business opening. And it was in that kind of period between Christmas and New Year, moving into January. And it really, I've said this plenty of times now, I don't think it could have worked really any better than it did. I think I've said that to you. I think it was just in that sort of sweet spot where people had just come off the back of eating and drinking, all through
Yeah,
Christmas, and they were thinking about, okay, what's my New Year's resolutions now? And we got, I think we're up to now just under 50 signups in the last sort of 3 weeks. So yeah, in terms of the marketing, that's what we sort of focused on. New gym opening, obviously tapping into New Year's resolutions and the January sort of kick that most gym owners get. But with your guys' guidance, I got those ads set up, launched at the right times, and yeah, it's paid off hugely because we're nearly up to sort of the operational capacity of the business within the first 20 days of opening. And
yeah,
my initial aims for the first quarter was to get up to that. So yeah, like I said, I don't think it could have really gone much better than it did.
perfect. And what are you actually looking at now in terms of like operational capacity, revenue potential? Like, where can that business go? Again, thinking about like, you started quite heavy on the one on one, very like time intensive to now having a scalable model that can do a decent amount of revenue as well?
Yeah, definitely. So we're currently sitting at about 50 group sessions a week. So there's a lot of room to sort of grow that and improve that. I think I wanted to start at that point first and foremost because I increased the size of the sessions. So that already took my sort of operational capacity significantly higher than my previous facility. But equally, at my previous facility, I was trying to fit as much as I possibly could within the sort of day, if you like. So my PTs and myself were working, still back to back, whether that be group classes, one-to-one PTs, and I really wanted to sort of tap into the working quality of the business so that I could start introducing new roles to my people that work for me, like
Yeah.
helping me out with the sort of operational side of the business, and that required me to reduce probably the amount of hours that I put out a week and have designated sort of breaks within the day that they were assigned other sort of tasks within the business. So it didn't become this sort of hamster wheel of monotonous PT work that a lot of people have to do just to make sort of ends meet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
So like I said, in terms of the revenue potential, that's gone up, circa 35 to 40% in the business, just moving locations. We've still got wiggle room to add another 12 to 15 sessions in there a week if we really want to maximize that schedule. But that's something that we'll talk about as demand sort of grows. Equally, I've actually managed to now, you know, give the people that work for me some other roles outside of just, PTing groups and classes, which include sort of the actual running of the business as well, which is quite a nice feeling as well because they're not just sort of working back to back all day.
Yeah, it's good because like we certainly used to do that at my gym in the early days. It was like you're doing a morning shift and an evening shift and coaching nonstop. And being able to create a role that doesn't always require that, where people aren't always doing split shifts and they've got other responsibilities that adds value to the business off the gym floor. That works for you as the business and the business owner, but also for your team members as well. It gives them some other areas to progress in, other ways to earn their income and stuff like that. So, final thing then is just from your perspective, working, with us over the last couple of years, what would you say are, one, two, three, maybe like biggest wins or biggest benefits that you've got out of the relationship that we've had so far?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably what I have the most to say about. The main thing that sticks out for me is I think you quickly realize as a business owner that time is your sort of most valuable commodity, right? So you're essentially trying to buy your time back always. I think when I first joined Gym Owner, you quickly established that sort of you can't wear all the hats in the business. You can't be the PT on the floor, the person who's operating the business, the person who's directing everything. It's just a one-way ticket to sort of burning out. So I think the biggest thing for me was the time that it saved. The trial and error that you went through yourself with your sort of gyms that you ran and operated means that I don't have to go through that myself. And what took you 10 years, you can teach me in 3 months, and I can implement those systems and know that they're foolproof, tried and tested, so that I don't have to go through the rigmarole of trying to run a marketing system, sending out all the emails to all the clients that, apply to the business myself manually, and then realizing that I can't do that for 100 people a day. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
the first and foremost biggest thing is the time that it saves. That's probably the most valuable thing. Secondly, I think that gym owner really sort of emphasizes that are you really maximizing the model that you currently run? So a lot of people will preemptively probably go and look at a second facility that's twice the size, but really, do you need that? Or is there something we can look at with the business that you're currently running, some revenue that you're sitting on, that you can easily tap into to 2x your revenue? And then lastly, I think it's the third sort of thing is what you guys constantly update us with, which is valuable. 'Cause you know that the world of business is constantly sort of evolving, and people are relying much more on meta ads and stuff like that to sort of advertise their own businesses. And if you're running a business and operating a business, you don't have loads of time to go and research these sorts of things, the stuff that's changing. And, akin to what you've said, on the program, it's not enough anymore to just put an ad up that says 6 weeks challenge in Weybridge, that you have to stand out from other people, because a lot of other people are tapping onto this now. You see ads everywhere now. So how are you going to differentiate from, the person who owns a group training facility 2 miles down the road for you? Well, I've got, a team of people who are researching what's updated and what works well. And then that gets fed into me so that I don't have to myself go, and find that information out. It's just readily available. And that's going to, that's the valuable thing moving forward, is that that's constantly updated for me so that I don't have to be the person to go and find that out myself. And so I think, time is the first bit, revenue potential, and are you actually maximizing the business? And then, keeping up with the current sort of the phases that marketing your business is going through, and how to sort of do that so you're getting a, steady stream of clients coming into your business.
Perfect, mate. All right, awesome. Last question then. From your experience now, because you've obviously had quite a rapid like growth and development, I would say, over the last few years. Like if you could go back to day one and give yourself some advice, something that you've learned, something that you wish you'd known back then, like what would that be that perhaps like another gym owner could take some value from?
I think that probably the most common answer you have would be, oh, I would start with gym owner straight away. But I feel like for
Bad idea.
myself, I wouldn't actually change that much. The reason being is I feel like, as someone who's in this industry, it's kind of like a rite of passage to burn yourself out on, coaching. And I feel like, had I just jumped straight into it, I wouldn't have really earned the right to be doing what I'm doing now. Like, I know what hard graft feels like. And, I'm still grafting. It's no different, but I'm not doing back to back PTs for 10 hours a day, every day. So, it might have been nice to jump on gym owner 6 months sooner so that I didn't reach that point. But equally, I'm glad I did. My advice would be that to myself, that go and speak to someone who knows more about what they're doing than you do, and let them give you advice. I think it's stupid to think that you're sort of the smartest person in the room. So you, having done 10 years of this, you're someone that I should be sort of speaking to and learning from, which is exactly what I went out and did. And it's obviously paid off massively. And I'll continue to sort of grow and learn as well. And it's nice as well. Like, I think that the whole gym owner system, it speaks to me quite a lot. I'm someone who likes a lot of structure in their life, whether that be sort of with my training or diet or lifestyle and stuff like that. So the way that you guys operate is very similar to how I like to do things myself. So, that is just, one of the benefits of being on your program, is that it's very akin to what I like to do myself.
All right, perfect. That's awesome, mate. I think that's a good perspective as well, because like having gone through the long hours and the tough work, you kind of appreciate the change more when you kind of
100%.
get a
Yeah.
bit more leverage and the business feels easier and smoother and, similar or better revenue with less work and all of that kind of stuff. It gives you an appreciation of that, having gone through the long hours and the tough work and the burnout and all of that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing.
man. I think just to reiterate what you said there, it's like a rite of passage doing that sort of thing that every person who's a PT or gym owner will go through. I think where my head's at now is like, things are going so well, I'm scared they won't go well, if you know what I mean, which is a good problem to have. I'm like, oh, when's it going to get really hard again? I think that's sort of a natural sort of progression as well. But I think the system's pretty foolproof. I believe in what you guys are doing, and like I said, it's money that I've spent that I've seen back tenfold. Joining you guys, and I would never have had to been able to progress at the sort of speed that I have without the structure of the gym owner program. That's for sure. It would probably have taken me 5 years and lots more grey hairs, but I'm here. I'm 28. I'm ready to sort of keep going with this now.
Awesome, mate. Well, I appreciate that. Is there anything else you want to add or anything like that?
No, mate. Just appreciate you guys. Yeah, what you've built is really, really good, and it brings a lot of value and saves me a lot of time and stress. So yeah, appreciate it.